I picked out the title for this video before I even made the video, and before people get mad at me, I am not actually disappointed myself that the F-18 is in the game and the way it's been implemented so far on the first dev server, but I'd imagine there's probably a lot of F-18 fans out there that are probably rather disappointed seeing how the Hornet is in game with this first dev server. From what I can tell with the different Hornet versions I've played around with so far in this dev server, it's honestly pretty good feeling. The flight model feels what I had expected from the Hornet, the weapons kit is cool, you get 10 AMRAMs, and the model looks absolutely gorgeous, but the problem is that this plane, in my opinion, was added far too late for it to actually get its time in the spotlight. Of course, it's going to get a spotlight anyways, it's a brand new, shiny, cool vehicle, and overall I think the implementation of it has been done pretty well so far. It is only the first dev server, but I like what I see so far. There's nothing game breaking about this plane. It is 14.0 because it carries 10 AMRAMs, I'd imagine. If it didn't have that many missiles, I think it could easily be 13.7. In fact, even the way it is right now, I think it should be 13.7 with this first dev server iteration. And if it didn't have so many missiles, it could even make an argument for 13.3. If you'll notice the top left of the screen, I only have 60 countermeasures. This will change for the F-18C late Hornet, which is one you see on screen. Do expect more countermeasures in the future. This is of course just placeholder, which is fine by me. But from what I'm told, this F-18C specifically should carry 120 countermeasures, which isn't perfect by any means, especially for today's top tier, but it's certainly better than 60. As of right now, there is two big shortcomings, I think, with this aircraft that are going to make it a little unenjoyable, at least for me to play. I'm not exactly a Hornet fan to begin with. I do think this plane looks really cool though. That aside, the radar right now feels pretty jank. It very well could be placeholder, obviously, but it has very much the same issues that I've had with the Eurofighter Typhoon, especially on its dev server and early debut. The F-18 is very similar. The radar just doesn't seem to know what it's looking at basically ever, and when you lock onto somebody with TWS, it just recorrects their position all the time and is basically looking somewhere where the plane actually is not. And it's just really frustrating to use. You'll see what I'm talking about when you're actually using this plane and have your hands on it, but it just seems like the radar is lost very often. So I do hope that the radar in TWS mode gets tuned a little to be more sure of itself. It is very annoying with how it's just constantly switching to random portions of the sky, not being able to find the target that it's actually trying to look at. I really would like to see this fixed, really for most of the planes in War Thunder, not just the F-18. There are some that do it pretty badly still. The F-18 is one example. That's not really the Hornet's fault, that's just kind of the way things are modeled right now for some aircraft. Again, it will be nice to see in the future, but something that is the F-18's fault that I think a lot of people just simply were not ready for when they talk about this plane is how poor the flight performance really is. The F-18, and one of the reasons I'm kind of an F-18 hater honestly, is very mediocre for the standards of this generation of aircraft. It is extremely underpowered when you look at its peers, both in real life and of course at its battle rating right now at 14.0 in War Thunder. The thrust to weight of this plane is extremely lacking. It is very slow. If you guys watched my JF-17 video I've posted recently, the Hornet suffers from very much the same issues. You are not going to be winning BVR fights in the F-18. Of course, it'll happen sometimes, sure, but if your enemy is competent, if they see you, if it's kind of an even, equal grounds engagement, the Hornet is just too slow. Its missiles are not going to have as much energy as the ones flying right at you. It gives the enemy a lot more range to reach out and get you defensive earlier. It's just not a very fun plane to try to do long-range engagements with because how slow this plane really is. And then of course when you go for missile evasions and cranking and notching and stuff like that, you lose speed like there's no tomorrow. It's kind of like an American Su-27. It pulls a lot of AOA, which is a pro in some cases, but of course the con is that you lose your speed very quickly, and that is not good, especially in a BVR fight. However, it does have 10 AMRAMs, which do help it in a BVR fight, obviously, but I think it would matter a lot more if the game modes in War Thunder allowed for you to find more isolated engagements more often. It would be really cool if you could take the F-18 into a game mode where it's not just a constant 16 versus 16 Fox 3 furball. Instead, you could find maybe one or two guys off to the side of the map by themselves, and that way your 10 AMRAMs, despite the poor flight performance of this plane, could actually give you the edge in BVR just because you can keep on spamming missiles over and over at the same target, keeping them defensive, using more realistic Fox 3 tactics, of course. That's simply just not the way it is in War Thunder though, and we have to go by the game that we have, and the 10 AMRAMs do not save this plane in BVR. There's definitely been situations where keeping someone defensive with 10 AMRAMs has helped me while I've played this plane so far, but as a whole, I just do not like challenging things like F-15s or F-16s, Eurofighter Typhoons, or even the new Su-30 that is quite a menace itself for the Soviet tech tree. In fact, I'm just going to tell you right now, the Hornet looks very cool 100%. It is cool that it has 10 AMRAMs, but I do not think that this plane is or ever will be more competitive than, say, the F-15E, the F-15C, and of course the Eurofighter Typhoon, and arguably maybe not even the F-16C. I could compare it to things like the Rafale, but those are just completely different playstyles, different missile kits. It's not really worth comparing. With that being said, people like certain planes in real life, and the F-18 is no exception. It does have a fan base, and people will want to play this plane, and you're gonna have fun in it either way. That's just the way top tier combat works. You don't have to be in the absolute best airframe all of the time to get kills. Situations just present themselves, and you gotta try to find the optimal position to be in those situations as often as possible, and having 10 AMRAMs certainly can help. I will say that I think the more competitive F-18s for their battle ratings are going to be the Sparrow carrying ones, which we do have a new missile coming to the game, the AIM-7P. It's just an AIM-7M with a little bit better of a seeker. To my understanding, you'll actually have data link, and so if you lose lock, you can just reconnect lock at any point in the missile's flight, similar to what we see on the R-27ER. Other than that, it's still got AIM-7M flight performance, so its range, acceleration, all that kind of stuff is the same as the 7M. Not a huge upgrade, but still an upgrade. And I think at the battle rating of 12.7 and 13.0, the only one with 7Ps is 13.0, by the way. But even with AIM-7Ms and AIM-9Ls at 13.0, it's still going to be a decent plane. AIM-9Ms would definitely be nice to have. I don't know if they could technically even use them because it would be some kind of Navy issue, I'm sure. Let me know in the comments down below. Things like the F-15A at 13.0 already have 9Ms, the Su-27 with R-73, so IRCCM at 13.0 is definitely not unheard of. It would be cool if these F-18s also got AIM-9Ms. And just to clarify, the FA-18C late, which is one you've been seeing on screen the entire time, does have AIM-9Ms. So that's pretty much my general overview and opinion on the F-18 as of right now on the first dev server. I don't want to go too in-depth because these videos obviously get very outdated very quickly. In fact, if you're watching this the day after it's uploaded, hell, even a few hours after it's uploading, it might be misinformation just because things are constantly changing on the dev server, of course. But just to touch on its flight performance a little bit more, which again, keep in mind this could very rapidly change and not be accurate, but as of right now, its 1v1 dogfight performance is very underwhelming, which I kind of expected it to be. The Hornet is not known for rate fighting, it is not known to keep its speed and have good sustained dogfighting capability, and so I kind of just saw this coming. A lot of people saw this coming, and again, the disappointment is probably going to largely come from Hornet fans that love the F-18 and just don't realize how mediocre this airframe actually is. Again, I would have loved if this came to the game earlier and it had a little bit more time in the spotlight as a very competitive plane at top tier, but that's just not the case. I do like the implementation. Again, I love that it's just not brokenly overpowered like a lot of the planes we have gotten in the past. It's a breath of fresh air to have an addition that doesn't have to be the absolute meta and the best plane in the game, and I do like the model. I like the weapon kit. It offers a unique playstyle, to say the least, even if not necessarily the best. Being able to just spam all those AMRAMs is quite enjoyable. That's pretty much it on the F-18. I will probably upload videos about the Sparrow carrying F-18s later, not really a need to cover them right now. So the Su-30 is likely to be next, and man, I have high hopes for that plane in ARB. Let me know what you guys think of these new additions down in the comments below, and I'll just let this gameplay play out just so you can watch the Hornet a little bit more. I'll see you later.